Good morning, and welcome to One Baha'i, that video blog where I talk about my own relationship to the Baha'i faith and a few of my thoughts on it. As you know, it's nothing official, it's just me. I've been doing this for about a week, maybe a bit more now, and I realize I've never actually introduced myself. Hi, my name is Mead, and I'm originally from Chicago, grew up in the shadow of the temple. And then I moved to Winnipeg, Canada. Well, after a little bit of time in England, moved to Winnipeg, Canada, and met my wife out there. And I always tell people I'm a horrible husband because when we got married, she ran off and joined the military. Anyways, one day she came home. It was literally the day that we had finished renovating our kitchen. She came home and she says, "Oh, I've been transferred to Victoria." So, for the last decade, we've been in Victoria, Canada, on the West Coast. And this morning, I had the wonderful, wonderful bounty of walking over to the cliffs by our home, staring out over a small lagoon, the ocean, and the mountains on the other side of the straits. And was listening to my wife chanting and singing. I'll share some photos of that later. We're recording a video of her singing. And it was just an amazing way to begin the day. I've mentioned a number of times that I was raised Jewish, and I often say it was a non-practicing Jewish household. And eventually I recognized Jesus as the light of the world. But I always had trouble with the Christians who said, we're right and everyone else is going to hell. Couldn't accept that. Made no sense to me. And started looking at other religions and eventually recognized that every time Baha'u'llah said something that I disagreed with, he would be proven right. And one day I was reading something and I said, oh, no, I disagree with that. Oh, Baha'u'llah said it. He must be right. And that was when I realized I was a follower. I was not a blind follower. I'm still not a blind follower. I question a lot of things, but with the intention of seeking the truth behind it. When I find something I disagree with, I presume that it's my own lack of understanding. And I try to find a deeper layer, a deeper level of meaning where I can understand a greater truth. And I've always found it. That's the beauty of the writings to me. That's one of the things that helps me recognize them as sacred text. Now, recently, you're all familiar with the Universal House of Justice. If you're not, I'm kind of wondering why you're watching this blog, but I'm sure you are. And this year was kind of interesting because normally they send us a message for Rizwan, which is April 20th, 21st. But this year they sent one on Naw Ruz, March 21st. And I commented it on my blog, One Baha'i. But I thought I would talk about it a little bit today because as my wife and I were walking home this morning, we were talking about some of the ideas inherent within this letter. Now, I know over the last few days I've been talking about the Tablet of Ahmad, but, I feel like moving on to something different for a little while. So I have the letter in front of me. You can see that my eyes go down to look at it. And I'm going to be going back and forth between reading it and talking about it a little bit. I'm not going to read the letter out loud because you probably have it in front of you. If you don't, there is a link in the description of the video to the letter. So please feel free to click on it, follow along. They begin with the phrase, "We feel compelled by current events." I love that phrase. Compelled by current events. I had to look up the word compelled. I kind of knew the general meaning of it. But it was forcibly driven by a sense of obligation. Due to the current events in the world, the Universal House of Justice felt compelled to write us a month ahead of time. And they quickly talk about recent weeks and months. An apprehensive world has been coming to terms with a rapidly evolving health crisis affecting people all over the world. I'm sure you felt it. I'm sure we've all felt it. That's one of the reasons I've started this video. It was something that I could do every morning to try to keep in touch with my friends around the world. I've been very surprised and very grateful at all the people I've met because of this project. And I do feel impelled to continue it. I will be doing it Monday to Friday-ish until these various lockdowns around the world are over, until I can get back to work. And I would love to hear your input. What would you like me to talk about? Are there phrases? Are there quotes? Are there stories you would like me to share? Otherwise, I kind of just go as I do. You'll notice quite often that my eyes are mostly closed. The reason for that is that I usually have my eyes like this, and that just looks really scary on the video, so I prefer to keep them a little bit more shut. I've had a couple people ask me about that. So I'm reading this letter, and you'll notice that there are 6 paragraphs, so I'm going to quote them by paragraph number. In paragraph 1, they say, "Seldom has it been more evident that society's collective strength is dependent on the unity it can manifest in action." And this is something we've seen a lot of in recent weeks. We saw this virus spread rapidly through whole communities because a unity of action was not taken. We saw it move from one country to another country because unity between countries was not being manifested to the degree that it needs to be. And even today, when I turned on the news, when I started looking at the news this morning, I saw people protesting against these lockdowns, saying, it's fake news, it's false, why do we need to lock down? Let's protest this. And all I can do is just shake my head in dismay. But you know, I'm reminded of a statement from the Universal House of Justice. It's just over here. I'm just going to grab it. I was reading this yesterday with a group of friends. It's in Ruhi Book 10. And there it is. It was written on the 28th of December, 2010. They talk about the difficulties around the world and the 3 protagonists, the individual, the institutions, and the community. And this is not only in the Baha'i community, this is globally. You have individuals, you have institutions in society, you have the general community. And they say very clearly that there are difficulties in the world because the individual is clamoring for freedom. The institutions are demanding submission, and the community is claiming precedence. So you can see that each of these protagonists has a valid spot in society. They have a valid claim on society, but they need to find a balance between each other. And this is part of the difficulty that we are seeing with the unity around the world, or the lack thereof. People are claiming precedence one over the other. The individuals want more freedom. The community is saying, hey, but you have to think about the community. Well, we need to do all of it. We need to find the balance between these 3. And that's the tricky part. So when they say society's collective strength is dependent on the unity it can manifest in action, this is part of what I think they're talking about. Finding this balance between these 3, the individual, the institutions, and the society, the community at large. We need to find the balance between them so that we can express it in unity and further move forward as a human race. I find it very interesting when I think about those three, and when I look at the news, you can always see where the balance between them is off. Now, in the third paragraph of this recent letter, Naw Ruz, New Year's, they say, at a time of another crisis, Abdu'l-Baha offered these words of counsel. And I find that intriguing because they're reminding us that this is not the only crisis we have ever faced. We're always facing crises. It's the nature of humanity, the eternal cycle of crisis and victory. Every crisis generates its own victory. Every victory has the seeds of the very next crisis. This is the way we move forward. We don't move forward in a straight line. We move forward in crises and victories. It's a sine wave. So this reminder of that is very timely to me. And Abdu'l-Baha says in his letter to the Baha'is at that time, he says, you must rise above the horizon of firmness and steadfastness with illumined faces and radiant brows. Firmness, steadfastness. But those aren't enough. We need to be illumined and radiant. I remember a few years ago, I was tutoring Ruhi Book 4, the stories of the twin manifestations, and there was a passage that said, read the following quote with radiant joy. And I remember this one woman, it was her turn to read, and I don't remember the quote offhand, but she basically read it, all praise, O my God, be to thee, who art the source of all glory and majesty of greatness and honor of loftiness and grace. And it was really monotone and kind of boring. And I smiled afterwards. I said, thank you very much. Can you read it again, but this time with joy? And she says, well, I felt joy in my heart. I said, well, I know, but nobody else did. I mean, she was a very good friend, so I could get away with that, you know. And it reminds me of Jesus when he says, you can't hide that light under a bushel. We have to be illumined. We have to be radiant at this time when so many people are somber and depressed. We need to stand out. Our joy becomes a point of attraction. So we have to rise above the horizon like the morning sun with illumined faces and radiant brows, in such wise that, God willing, the gloom of fear and consternation may be entirely obliterated. I've had a lot of friends comment that even though I post sometimes negative articles, I always do it with humor. I always try to make a point of a positive side of it. And that positivity seems to have attracted a lot of attention. So there's something to it. And then the Universal House of Justice goes on and says that the world stands more and more in need of the hope and the strength of spirit that faith imparts. So many people are hopeless today. They have no hope. We need to give them that hope. We have before us the vision of Baha'u'llah. We have that understanding of the nature of crisis and victory. We know we're in a crisis. We can definitely point out with absolute assurance that a victory is just around the corner. And they go on and they say, beloved friends, you have long been occupied, they say. We have long been working and nurturing groups of souls, quote, precisely the attributes that are required at this time. We are nurturing within groups of souls precisely the attributes that are required at this time. The work we've been doing for the last 20 years with the study circles and the junior youth groups and the children's classes and the devotional gatherings. This is what is needed. Unity and fellow feeling. Knowledge and understanding. The spirit of collective worship and common endeavor. These are the things that are getting communities past the difficulties that they are facing right now. Unity and fellow feeling. Knowledge and understanding. A spirit of collective worship and common endeavor. These are the things that will carry us forward. Turning the page. And then they say, though having to adapt to new circumstances, the believers have used creative means to strengthen bonds of friendship and to foster among themselves and those known to them the spiritual consciousness and qualities of tranquility, confidence, and reliance on God. Those are the qualities that are needed right now. Tranquility, confidence, and reliance on God. Now, what's interesting is that, as a friend of mine pointed out yesterday, those three appear to be backwards. They appear to be in the reverse order of how we get them. We rely on God, and this fills us with confidence. And through this confidence, we become more tranquil. And honestly, when I talk to a lot of my friends in the neighborhood, I've got a few friends outside watching right now, they are amazed at the tranquility within my own family. We're not panicking. We're not freaking out. We're going about our work. We're going about our day. We're doing our gardening. We're exercising. We're talking with each other. We're talking with friends through the window, and even in the front yard from a safe distance. Our tranquility surprises them. And the House of Justice continues, the elevated conversations that have occurred as a result have been a source of comfort and inspiration to many. I've heard that from my friends. A lot of people have said that the assurance that I feel of this nature of crisis and victory has been a source of comfort for them. It's been a source of inspiration. I have to tell them that this understanding that I get from the Baha'i writings has been a source of comfort to me too. Why would I expect it to not be a source of comfort for them? Just makes sense. And then the Universal House of Justice assures us of what the victory will look like, the nature of the victory that is coming. And again, we've shared this with our friends over the last couple weeks, couple weeks now. They say about humanity, humanity will ultimately pass through this ordeal, and it will emerge on the other side with greater insight and with a deeper appreciation of its inherent oneness and interdependence. What a beautiful phrase. And we see it over and over in stories from around the world. People are becoming more aware and appreciating to a greater degree the inherent oneness and interdependence of humanity. And then the House of Justice goes on in paragraph 4. They say, this is not the moment to talk about what we're doing. It's not the moment to talk about our achievements. That's not what people need to hear about right now. We've done a ton over the last 20, 30, 100 years. But now is not the time to talk about it. Now is the time to focus on helping our friends, to work wherever circumstances permit. Paragraph 5 is interesting. for me, it's kind of like the last paragraph, because paragraph 6 is sort of it's almost like a prayer. But in paragraph 5, they are praying earnestly for us. The Universal House of Justice is praying, and they are specifically praying for, quote, the Almighty to bestow upon you assurance, stamina, and staunch spirits. And they go on and they say, may your minds be ever bent upon the needs of the communities to which you belong, the condition of the societies in which you live, and the welfare of the entire family of humanity to whom you are all brothers and sisters. So that section where they're asking God to bestow upon us assurance, stamina, and staunchness of spirit, staunch spirits, that to me is like a warning. It's a blessing for sure, but it's also a warning in my own mind. It's telling me what we're going to need over the next few weeks, months, years. This is not something that is going to go away quickly. What we are facing will require stamina. We need to remain assured in what we're doing, in where humanity is moving, but we're going to need stamina. That to me speaks of a long, difficult journey. And staunch spirits, spirits that nothing can quench. They continue on after that and they say, and in your quiet moments, when no course of action other than prayer seems possible, again, to me, that speaks of exhaustion. And at those times when nothing other than prayer seems possible, then we invite you to add your supplications to our own and ardently pray for the relief of suffering. I find it very intriguing what they point out to us, what they say we're going to need. You see, years ago, the Universal House of Justice said that we were a community moving from strength to strength. We're not moving from weakness to strength. We're moving from strength to strength. And some of the strengths that we have right now are reliance on God, confidence, tranquility. Those are strengths that we have. You have. We all have that. What we need more of is assurance, stamina, and staunch spirits. To me, that speaks of trials coming up. But you know, the greater the trials, the greater the victory. And when I look throughout history, when I look at the story of Baha'u'llah's life, when I look at Abdu'l-Baha's life, every time there was a phenomenal crisis, we saw the most astonishing victories. I just kind of wanted to share that today. I don't feel like it's much, but it's what little bit I can offer about this letter. I do encourage you to read it. And like the Universal House of Justice, I think I will end with those words of Abdu'l-Baha. O thou provider, assist thou these noble friends to win thy good pleasure, and make them well-wishers of stranger and friend alike. Bring them into the world that abideth forever. Grant them a portion of heavenly grace. Cause them to be true Baha'is, sincerely of God. Save them from outward semblances, and establish them firmly in the truth. Make them signs and tokens of the kingdom, luminous stars above the horizons of this nether life. Make them to be a comfort and a solace to humankind, and servants to the peace of the world. Thank you for joining me today. I'm very grateful. I really do appreciate your time. I hope you'll join me tomorrow. Please comment. I really do rely on the comments that come in. And don't forget to hit like. I always wondered why people said that at the end of every video, but evidently those likes really do mean that the videos get shared with more and more people. So if you want to help spread these teachings, spread this message of hope, whenever you see a video on the Baha'i faith that you enjoy, hit that like button. Not just mine, but any of them. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.